Well, hello, Happy New Year, welcome to the Homemade Songwriter. I'm Matt, and today we're going to talk about how to take your chord progressions to the next level. The foundation of any song is its chord progression. It's like the bones and the muscles of the song. It carries it forward, gives it movement, gives it emotion, it carries the feel and the weight of the song. So the more of the story that you can tell with your chord progression, or the larger your vocabulary to be able to communicate with those chords, the stronger and more supported your lyrics and the actual meaning of your song will be. And so having good chord progressions is really important. The more of the story that you can tell with your chord progression, the clearer the meaning of your song is. So today we're going to work on developing your vocabulary to build stronger and more clear themes and more interesting chord progressions so that your songs and your meanings come across clearly to the listener. So here are 5 quick tips on how to up your chord progressions. So the first and probably the most basic tip I have for upping your chord progressions is to add a little movement to them in the form of hammer-ons and pull-offs. Hammer-ons and pull-offs are really simple moves that you can pull off on the guitar where you're just literally hammering on, i.e. adding fingers and moving the notes up, or pulling off and letting the notes move down. It's the difference between this C and this C. Just a little bit of movement there. Creates a little bit of tension but resolves it immediately. It's just kind of a fun way to add some motion to the chord progression. A great example of this is Noah Gunderson has a song called The First Defeat, and I think it's it's a beautiful song. I love the arrangement of it. I love the piano, I love the guitar. It's very simple, right up my alley. But it's a really good example of having a chord progression that moves. So I'm going to play the chord progression once through just the chords as they are, minor 6, 4, 1, 5. And then I'm going to halfway through change to how Noah plays it, where he adds all the hammer-ons and pull-offs. And you decide for yourself what you think is more interesting. So it's subtle, but there's just something extra there that tells more of the story than the chords all by themselves. And it's because there's this little underlying melody that flows throughout. If you listen carefully, it goes like this. That's what the hammer-ons are doing. They're adding that little melody over the chords. And this can be as simple or as complicated as you like. Here's another example in the key of D. So give it a whirl, play around with the chords that you usually play, and see if there's any creative ways you can add a melody via hammer-ons and pull-offs. So the second tip is all about the timing of the emotional weight of your chords with the emotional weight of your lyrics. So this tip applied to my life manifests itself in the 7 chord, which sounds like, here's like an A7 shape. Which I used to hate that shape. I used to hate the chord, hate the way it sounded. I associated it with country music, which I was not a fan of at all. But a few years ago, when Austin was still living in Nashville, my wife and I went up to Nashville to visit him and his wife, and we went to like a writer's round concert where there was 4 songwriters on stage playing songs they'd written. These weren't like famous musicians. These were the songwriters behind famous musicians. So this one songwriter named Matt Jenkins played a song called Good Country Song, which I think later down the road Blake Shelton picked it up and he's since recorded it. And I'm not really a fan of his version, but when I was at this show, watching the original songwriter play that song with his stories and his emotion, and watching him perform it was literally life-changing for me. I mean, it made me turn my back on hating country music, and suddenly I was embracing country music fully. And the way the chorus goes, he landed on that 7 chord just at the right moment with the melody and just at the right moment with the lyrics, that it just like pushed and elevated the whole song forward to the next level. That was like really moving for me. I think like the next probably 30 songs that I wrote were trying to achieve that same effect with my songs, the same chord progression, same everything. So let me play you that chorus of the song so you can kind of get an idea of what it's like when all those things hit at just the right moment. Keep your ear out for this chord. I'm talking about a good country song, makes you smile, makes you hurt, leaves you hanging on every word. A good country makes you leave. Raise some hell or hit your knees. All I know is I think of home. Grab my guitar and strum along. Kick on back and sip me something strong. When I hear a good country song. I just love it. I think it's so cool the way it lands there, and it's awesome. Tip number 3 is to play in an open tuning or use some kind of cut capo to give you different voicings of chords. So you've seen me play this quite a lot on this channel. This is actually my wife's guitar. Shout out to her. We designated this as our open tuning guitar. So as I always keep mine in standard, I always keep this one in an open tuning. If you don't have another guitar that you can designate and leave as an open tuning, which you should, by the way, because this is just different tension on the neck, and so this guitar has become accustomed to this type of tension versus going back and forth between standard and an open tuning on your guitar might not be the best for the neck. If you don't have another guitar, then I would recommend getting a cut capo. This is something I only found out about 3 years ago maybe, and this is a game changer for me. Let me show you what this does. So it's just like a normal capo, but you can see it's a little bit shorter than usual. So when I put this on my guitar, you see it only covers, it skips the bottom E string, and then it presses down the next 3 strings and leaves the B and the E string unpressed. So now when I strum my guitar that's in standard tuning, it's suddenly in a beautiful open tuning, which just allows you to do a whole lot of things. So if I play in D shapes, there's just a lot of movement that I can add. So here's the intro of Amazing Grace. It's just one of my all-time favorite things because it puts the guitar in a tuning that I can play a lot of melodies with. When I lead worship at my church, I use this all the time because right now we have a pretty small band, and so this allows me to play melodies in between verses so that long hymns don't get super boring. So the cut capo just opens a lot of possibilities for me and my playing to be able to move around and play melodies, and I just think it's a whole lot of fun. So if you want to give it a try without buying one, you can actually take a regular capo and turn it around backwards, put it on your guitar like that, and it accomplishes pretty much the same thing. I wouldn't do that long term just because I feel like this pad is designed to be on your neck and just the wear and tear on your guitar. But if you want to give it a try, then I would say go for that. So ultimately the goal here with an open tuning is to just hear chords in a different way. So let me play a chord progression in standard tuning, and then I'll play it on the open tuning guitar. You can just kind of get a feel for how even the same exact chord progression, same exact chords can hit you a little differently. So it just is voiced a little bit differently. The overall melody and harmonics move a little differently when they're played like this versus played on a standard tuning. And since most songs you hear are played on a guitar in standard tuning, it can just be a way to add a different element and add some variation to what the listener is hearing. Even if they're hearing the same chords, the same chord progression, it's just fundamentally a little bit different. Similar as tip number 3, tip number 4 is to use a capo to play the same chord progression but with different chord shapes. Now let me explain what I mean by this. This is a C chord. You all probably know that's a C chord if you play guitar. But if I put a capo on 5 and I play what would be considered a G, that's also a C chord. It's the same chord. And the reason this is interesting is because those two chords, even though it's the same exact chord made up of the same notes, because it's played in a different shape, a G shape versus a C shape, they carry the weight of a C differently. So this can be a really quick way to up your chord progressions without really changing the bones of what your chord progression is. So I'm going to play a chord progression in the key of G, but with 3 different chord shapes, so 3 different variations. And you're just going to find that I think this sounds a little bit different than this. And they both sound a little bit different than this. Just to be clear, that's the same exact chord progression, the same exact chords. It's 1, 5, 6, 4, D, A, B minor, G, but I'm playing it in different chord shapes in different places along the neck, and all of those just carry a different sonic energy. So they sound a little bit different, they might inspire you a little bit different. It's just a way to change up your song and add some variation without changing the bones of what your song is. Tip number 5, and our final tip today, is just to be intentional with the voicing of the chord you choose to use. So for me in my writing, this comes down to a G chord, and typically I play my G chord one of 2 ways. Either like this, or like this. And the reason that I have 2 different G chords is just for different styles of playing. So this G, to me, feels very tight. There's not a lot of notes of the G chord being played, it just repeats itself. I use it more for the kind of bluegrass style flat picking type playing. And then the other G, I play it like this so that I can do the hammer-on, which is, to my ear, played a lot in kind of more of a country vein, singer-songwriter style song. So when I'm writing in that direction, that's the G I go for. And if I'm writing in the other direction, I play the other G. So finding multiple ways to voice your chords can open a lot of possibilities, because sonically I think it fits into different genres and different moods and different, maybe even song ideas better. So when it comes down to it, you want to write chord progressions that are inspiring to you, that sound good to your ear. So learning to add these changes to your chord progressions, or learning how to voice your chord progressions differently, or just adding to your overall chord progression vocabulary will take you to the next level. It's little changes here and there that can inspire you in a new way and serve as a new jumping off point to your next and best song. Because we all know that your next song is your best song. So with that in mind, keep writing, and we'll see you in the next one.